I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. The Denver Post has compiled a list of instances where Barry referred to tranquilizer darts during his more than a dozen interviews with law enforcement. It's actually astonishing how often it came up and also how erratic Barry was in his various statements. I think it's fair to say his story regarding the use of tranquilizer darts has evolved over time. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So according to the Post, investigators asked Barry Morphew if he'd ever missed a shot with his tranquilizer gun during the April 2021 interview. And his response was, "A deer? Oh no, I used to raise deer. I've shot hundreds." Well, that is a really big statement. I've shot hundreds of deer using a tranquilizer dart. Now, that raises the question, is Barry's use of tranquilizer darts below average, or far above average compared to the average hunter? What would you say? He also told investigators that he would revive the deer after tranquilizing them by giving the animals a reversal shot. So he knew how to do that as well. But he couldn't remember if he had any of that reversal drug at his house. I do think it's possible Barry may have wanted to subdue, restrain, and revive Suzanne in order to see what was on her phone, perhaps gain access to her bank accounts, even delete messages, and perhaps even hijack her Facebook account. Now let's deal with Barry's inconsistent statements on the dart gun. Barry's stories regarding his use of the tranquilizer gun, as I say, evolved over time. First, he said he'd never used it, ever, in Colorado. According to the Post, Barry Morphew first told investigators on May 28, 2020, that he kept darts in his home in order to tranquilize deer, to transport the animals and sell them, though he said he'd only done so in Indiana, not in Colorado. Then he said he had used it on deer in Colorado in order to cut off their antlers. So months later, in March 2021, almost a year later, Morphew told investigators he used the darts to shoot and tranquilize deer. Why? Well, so that he could cut off their antlers. And he said that he may have tranquilized 2 deer at his home in Colorado in late April. He said authorities would find spent darts around his property. Then he said he'd used a tranquilizer gun from inside his home in late April. According to the Post, Barry Morphew told investigators in April 2021 that he sometimes shot deer in the backyard from his back door. He later also admitted that he sometimes shot the tranquilizer gun from, quote, that little breezeway from between the garage and the laundry room, end quote. The question is, did Barry shoot a tranquilizer gun at Suzanne while she was sunbathing? Was he monitoring her interactions via the iCloud, and is that why he acted when he did? According to the Post, the investigators noted that the breezeway is located close to an area where Suzanne Morphew was last known to be alive, sunbathing behind their home. She sent a selfie to her paramour after 2 p.m. on May 9th, 2020, and that photo, according to the Post, is the last time investigators can prove that she was alive. It's the prosecution's case that Barry was running around, and didn't he say he was shooting chipmunks to account for his strange movement around the home? According to the Post, Barry Morphew put his phone into airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. that day, and Suzanne Morphew never responded to messages from her paramour sent at around that time, 2:44 and 2:46 p.m. Barry also said, I'm telling you right now, I've shot 2 deer with my trank gun because I used to raise deer and I collect horns, and I'll tell you exactly what I did. They're in the yard, I shoot them and they go to sleep. I cut their horns off and I wake them up and they go off with no horns on their head. Now, in Suzanne's case, it's possible the cutting of the antlers off is analogous to getting access to Suzanne's personal bank accounts. According to the Post, in April 2021, Morphew told investigators that he uses what's known as the BAM formulation, BAM, a mixture of 3 drugs found in Suzanne Morphew's bones to sedate deer. He told investigators that he bought the chemicals in Indiana and kept them on his workbench in vials. He said he mixed the chemicals into darts himself rather than using a licensed veterinarian. And that's according to the affidavit. When investigators asked Barry, whether he could mix the tranquilizer without help from anyone, he answered, yeah, absolutely. Was any BAM formulation found in the Morphew home? If not, why not? If it was something Morphew commonly used, why was it not there? One of the investigators interviewed by the Post, or certainly an analyst, said that he was surprised the drug was detected in Suzanne Morphew's bones at all, let alone 3 years after her death. Now, I do think it's possible Suzanne was darted and then resedated. That's one scenario, because how else could such a large amount of chemicals be absorbed in her bones? It seems she must have been exposed to the chemicals for some time, and it is hard not to imagine that it was a high dose in order for it to remain present in her bones for up to 3 years later. Who knows, perhaps her being in bed and receiving chemotherapy through a cancer port, perhaps that is what gave her killer the idea in the first place, to use chemicals to keep her docile. The expert interviewed by the Post said that, if a person dies after being hit with a dart full of BAM, that person's heart would stop and there would be no time for the drug to be carried through the body and absorbed through the bone. So that scenario seems to be unlikely here. And so they also ask, they speculate, how long would a person with BAM in their system need to remain alive for the drug to be absorbed in their bones? And so, one does wonder, was Suzanne alive? Was she running? Was she trying to escape? Also, was the formulation specially geared to someone of Suzanne's size and weight to paralyze her? And maybe if she sort of started coming out of it, was she resedated, especially if her killer still didn't have all the information that he needed? And so, if that's the case, if the formulation was specially geared to customize, custom made for Suzanne's size and weight, wouldn't that suggest a hunter who was extremely experienced at darting? Well, who fits that profile? Think about Barry's words. They go to sleep. I cut their horns off and I wake them up. In Suzanne's case, what did her killer need from her? Well, isn't it obvious? Access to her money. In any event, when it comes to Suzanne's killer, the hunter is now the hunted. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.